This is going to be a quick video about the HDA node that I made to speed up importing of geometry from Houdini inside Unreal Engine. So idea is that it's a HDA that you just go ahead and put inside your level. In this case, I have set it up inside my Houdini, my Houdini tools package, but you can basically put it inside your content drawer and just drag it inside here, content browser, and use it the same way. But in this case, I have it inside here. And at the end of the day, you just want to drag it inside the level. And it is very similar to the default node that is inside Houdini called Houdini v1.0 import, which is basically a wrapper around the file node inside the Houdini. But this node is going to give you a little bit more options to control the bake location and also allow you to bake out multiple geometry files at the same time. So first of all, we want to get some geometry that we want to load inside Unreal Engine. In this case, I have inside Houdini, I'm using the same setup that I showcased for this set Unreal attributes node. I have basically just a couple of these boards, basically module board pieces that we can start to create some panels from. I went ahead and saved it out on the disk right here. So these are all the boards that I want to import inside Unreal Engine. And also, I'm also using this node to set up a couple of more options like a collision and all that. But that doesn't really matter in this case. So I have all these files inside here. Let's go ahead, go to the Houdini. Let's go ahead and copy this directory where the files are located. Well, let's go ahead and paste it inside here. In this case, I'm using the cook type single. So the single type means that I have to specifically point to the one file on disk. In this case, if you go ahead and put your directory location, it's going to automatically start filling out these parameters. Directory is called subdirectories, which is basically the any directory that has been found under the main directory, which is in this case I have PT clouds, which I'm not going to use this time. So if I want to get my files right from here, I have to use I can leave it empty. And the other one is going to basically fill out all the files that has been found inside there, and we can basically start selecting any of these, and you can see it starts to load them up. So these menus are not completely supported. These dynamic menus are not completely supported inside Unreal Engine, so they can get buggy if you go ahead and change your directory location. So if you are getting some errors, the best idea is just go ahead and delete the directory. If you want to change your directory, go ahead and delete your directory. Delete also this parameter, and then just repoint to your new directory, and this parameter should basically refresh again. So that's kind of a weird, basically not, that's kind of a little inconvenient, not convenient, but it works if you know the limitation just fine. So let's say I want to go ahead and say I want to get this geometry inside my content browser. So there's two ways that we can override. There are multiple ways that we can override the name on the inside the content browser in the location where we want to bake this geometry. So by default, if you want to save your geometry inside Unreal Engine, there should be attributes Unreal output name setup, Unreal output name, and Unreal bake folder setup. And these two control the name of the file inside the content browser and the location where it should be baked. But let's say I have not set up my Unreal bake folder. So the bake folder can be controlled also from these. There are a couple more parameters like here, Unreal Engine bake folder. And if you are cooking the PDG graph also here, basically there are a couple of options to set it already up without these custom parameters that I have already set up. But to keep it consistent with the tool's purpose, I have also given ability to say I want my custom folder to be determined by this parameter. If you go ahead and say I want to custom one and not use the attribute value that has been set up on this geometry, let's say I have not set it up and I know that I have not set it up. Let's say custom. And let's say I want to save it inside this custom bake folder. Just copy this place and go ahead and paste it inside here. And Our geometry looks fine. Our custom bake folder has been set up. Output name has been set up as a SM. This one, that's fine. We can leave it. Let's go ahead and bake it. You see, we have saved our geometry inside the directory that we have pointed to. Let's go back to it. And let's say let's say the default one, Unreal Bake folder attribute, which in this case I have set it up as the test bake directory. Let's go ahead and bake it again. In this case, you can see the geometry is being saved in this directory. Let's say I have not set up my name attribute for this geometry. So the name can actually be overridden inside here. You see there's Houdini output. You see you can actually override the output name inside here also. But to keep it consistent, we can use a custom name or use a file name. So the file name on disk is basically the same as the name that was cooked out in the content browser, except without the static mesh prefix. And let's say I want to use my file name as a cook name for this geometry. You can see there's also option to add prefix to basically match this name that has already that has been already set up as the Unreal output name. But let's say I do not want to use a prefix. Let's go ahead and say bake it. You can see in this case we have removed this SM and use our custom name from the file name on disk. So that's one way to go about it if you want your single file to be baked out. And the real power comes into play when you want to bake out a PDG. Basically, when we cook a PDG graph from this HDA, which basically means that we can bake out all of the geometry inside Houdini at once. So what we can do is go ahead and say PDG graph. In this case, we have to point to the directory. Go ahead and point to the same directory. Then we have to say if we want to subdirectory, that's fine, we do not want. In this case, we have to say which file pattern to search for. And if you know your group pattern wildcards, which basically the same thing is here, I say everything with the asterisk, say everything that ends up with bgo.sc files, which all these static meshes, like that. Turn off the recursive. We do not want to search recursively because there's nothing there. And then we also want to, since I have already set up all these attributes, I'm going to use my Unreal output name and Unreal bake folder from the attribute values. And I know that they should appear here. Let me delete all these. And all you have to do is go ahead and say, instead of the bake of the regular bake, go to the PDG assets link. And what you can do is go ahead and say, basically you can already say cook output. And I'm going to start cooking it here, and the geometry should appear here, but it will not be baked. Actually, it's going to be, or maybe it will be actually. No, it won't be. It will be only inside the level. We have to press bake to bake it out inside the content browser, to basically to detach it from the Unreal engine, from Houdini engine. So let's go ahead and wait a bit, and all the geometry should come in momentarily. You see, all geometry has been cooked out. And now we just go ahead and say PDG asset link, go ahead and bake it. And you can see we have baked out our geometry, and all of it is now inside the content browser, and it's been in the same place where our bake folder attribute has been set up for each one of them. And obviously, if the bake folder is different for each file, it would be saved out in different folders. So that's really the power of this PDG ability to bake out multiple files, is that they are going to look at these attributes that you have already set up if you do not change them, where to bake all of the geometry out and what their name is. So that's really cool thing with PDG to bake out the geometry. Another thing that I want to very briefly, I'm not really going to talk about all of that much, is this delete 3D hidden primitives group, which basically is all about the custom collision setting for the geometry inside Unreal Engine and Houdini. So I talk about this group, this 3D hidden group primitive group in my create Unreal where I talk about the write Unreal attributes node, which talks about how the collisions are written and how they are expected to be written. But the idea is that if we want for our, let's say, this simple box to have a custom collision, let's say if you want for this box to have a collision that is not exactly, that is not sourced from our original mesh. So let's say if I want for some reason to have this collision to be something like this for the geometry, we have to bring this geometry together with this. Basically, we have to merge the geometry that we want to save inside the Unreal Engine content browser together with the collision geometry. And that's fine. Houdini Engine will separate the geometry if it has been appropriately set up, but the negative part of it that we still have to, if we want to use the geometry inside Unreal Engine, inside Houdini, this collision would be also visible. So this is where the visibility node comes in handy. So the idea is that we can still write our custom collision and work with this geometry without worrying to see the custom collision overlap the geometry that we want to work in this inside Houdini, because we can basically put down a visibility flag. You can see if you put down a visibility, it's going to create this primitive group called group 3D primitives hidden primitives, which is basically the same node that you have ability to toggle on inside this parameter. So the idea is that we hide it inside Houdini so that we can work with this geometry without worrying about this collision. But if we want to use this geometry as a custom collision, we have to unhide this geometry before the baking it inside the Unreal Engine. So that's a caveat to do. So what we are doing it at the very last place, where when we start to bake it out, we say, okay, delete this geometry so that this geometry custom collision can be used as a so that this geometry can be used as a custom collision for the geometry if it has been set up. If it's not been set up, if you're using different kind of collision, which I talk about inside in the write Unreal attributes video, so that's fine. We can still toggle it on. It's not going to do anything. But if you know that we have our custom collision set up for the geometry, you definitely want to check it. And by default, it's actually going to be checked as a yes. So that's a very quick kind of a repeating of what I said about it inside the write Unreal attributes node video. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I have used this node a bunch of times when I want to import the geometry, when I want to modify geometry from the Houdini inside back to the Unreal Engine. So yeah, I hope you find this useful and see you next time.